All right, everyone. Donald Trump has officially withdrawn U.S. support for the UN's Arms Trade Treaty. Now, it's important to realize we were never actually technically party to the treaty because it was never ratified. What Trump has done is officially withdraw executive support and tell the Senate reconsider, basically consider condemning it and not being part of it, which means that we presumably won't. Of course, Trump would have to sign off on the idea. So we're not going to be party to this particular treaty. Now, what it would do is it controls the sale and the use of small arms, everything from small arms up to tanks and missiles and things like that. It doesn't make sense for the U.S. to sign on such treaties. Number one, insofar as small arms go, like in civilian hands, the U.S. government can't just sign a treaty and then begin enforcing it. It'd be impossible for any other force in the world to actually enforce such a treaty on the American public because of the Second Amendment. Now, this was pointed out. This is something that was a big issue during the Obama administration, which is that I think it was the UN Small Arms Treaty and a few of these others Obama supported. Now, they never got ratified because the Republicans, of course, blocked it from ratification. So the U.S. was never officially part of these treaties. I can remember years ago when this became an issue, a lot of Republicans said, well, Obama's trying to take your guns by signing a UN treaty. The blue hats are going to come in and disarm you and stuff. I'm thinking, legally speaking, the Constitution overrides any treaty we're part of. The U.S. can't join a treaty and then enforce any of its auspices if it contravenes the Constitution. Number two, the UN would not be capable of disarming anybody because it would be extremely outmatched by the U.S. civilian population. The U.S. military couldn't pacify the entire gun-owning population in a total war scenario without destroying the whole country, which will never happen. When people say, well, your AR-15 can't stand up to a Predator drone. No, but, soldiers standing on street corners are required to keep the peace in a martial law scenario. Kind of difficult for a tank to search your home. Pretty difficult for a Predator drone to do much of butt-fuck anything other than kill people. How are you going to know who you've got to kill when you've got millions and millions of people who are just regular citizens who happen to have guns? It's going to be a different issue. What I pointed out is that fuel lines would immediately break down because of sabotage. Drones and tanks and shit, they need a lot of fuel, dude. Well, if all of those refineries and shit get attacked by a bunch of citizen militiamen because they're tired of Predator drones blowing up their wives or something, yeah, there aren't going to be a whole lot of tanks that are still operative. Most of the military at that point would defect anyway, so, the government would lose, which is a funny thought. I love when the authoritarian leftists who have a stick up their ass about private gun ownership talk, they almost, I think, get off on the idea of people getting killed. They're too cowardly to do it themselves, so they have these weird fantasies about, like, being on the right side of history as our soldiers go and beat up these horrible rednecks or something. I think about how funny it would be when they immediately, like, break down in tears when they lose and they actually, like, end up being remembered as, like Benedict Arnolds and shit like that. Thankfully, I don't think there will ever be such a scenario. No, I don't believe a civil war is coming. Some people think so. I respectfully disagree. I think Tim Pool made a video the other day about Strauss-Howe and sort of civil conflict. I happen to disagree with the idea that we're on the precipice of a breakdown. But I think basically we should withdraw from as many treaties as possible because we simply should not be party to most of this going on. Inevitably, the other countries are less powerful than the United States. So when they design treaties and stuff and ask us to sign, usually it's an attempt to constrain our ability to operate. Why should we want to do that? Each country fundamentally looks out for itself first and foremost. If it can help others, that's great. If it can at least avoid harming others, that's fine too. It's noble to do so. But fundamentally, if there's something to be significantly gained, or there's some detriment to not doing so, a nation will default to defending itself first and foremost. That's simply how governments work, and it's how they should work. Every country should represent its own people's best interest. The government doesn't represent my best interest by signing on to another piece of bureaucratic red tape that involves arms sales, when so much of our money comes from selling people weapons to kill one another. By the way, I don't have a fucking problem with arms dealers. What I have a problem with is when they pump weapons into a region to try to destabilize it, and then you end up with slavery and shit like that. But if there's like a regular symmetrical war going on, yeah, go ahead, sell them jets, sell them tanks, make a lot of money. If for some reason we give away, in some cases, our older generation tech, we should sell it. You can discount it, but you can still make a profit off of it. Yeah, here, have some Bradley fighting vehicles. Have a first generation Abrams tank too. You know, it doesn't have, you know, fully modern armor or anything, but, you know, it's still a good tank. Still probably, it was funny when Russia rolled out the Armada tank, and they're like, wow, haha, our tanks are better than yours. And then there have been cases where they just randomly, like, break down during military parades. It's like, this is Soviet-era technology. It's a good tank. You know, you look at how it operates. It's not a bad vehicle at all, but it's got some quirks. Which is typically, in the West, we build something and it'll be better, but it costs 1,000 times more. They build something cheap and it's like they can hammer a microwave oven to the side to fix some of the systemic problem with it. And it breaks down all the time, but ultimately it sort of still works and does what it needs to do. That's basically how Russian tech operates. It's like, it's not going to be pretty. It's also going to be cheap. So, you know, it'll be cheaply built, but it'll work at least moderately well. You can get probably 5 of their tanks for the price of 1 of ours, so I'm not surprised when people lean towards the Eastern Bloc. Just think about China. They have their own Abrams knockoff now, I think, too. So, arms dealing's fine. Just, you know, I think that we should deal arms to the civilian population. I think that that these arms deals, like the Raytheon Corporation, should be able to sell grenade launchers to American citizens. Yeah, that'd be so cool. And we can have these great big-ass ranges where people can go and fire rocket launchers and drive around in tanks and cool shit like that. You can do that in Southeast Asia. During the Vietnam Wars, so many U.S. and foreign goods were pumped into the region, they still haven't run out. Afghanistan, same thing. I heard you can get a whole crate of older generation grenades, still working, more or less, for like $40. Yeah, you can go to Afghanistan, you know, you might get enslaved or in a poppy field or shot by the Taliban, but if you can survive that, you can buy machine guns and rockets and, you know, probably a tank. It'd be so great. You can actually legally buy a tank, but they have to drill a hole in the gun. Otherwise, it'd be more or less fully operative. Yeah, you could mount a Gatling gun on top. Those are legal too. Did you know that under U.S. law? If you put a Gatling, like an actual manual Gatling gun, it's not technically an automatic weapon at all. So you could have an armored turret up there, and you could, you know, basically, if you configured it right, you could take any acceptable weapon and put like a 200-round drum or a bandolier into it, and basically crank that shit all day. If you really wanted to, that'd be funny. I don't think that using a fully operative tank would be good for most scenarios. It's like, oh, I've got to cut these trees down. I'm just gonna, you know, fire at them with this Gatling gun and cut them down that way. You could do that. I've seen people do it. It's interesting. I know I got totally off topic. But yeah, guns are great. Yeah, selling guns is very lucrative. As long as we're not selling it to shitfucks, I don't care. Now, of course we do. We sell to the Saudi government, need I say more. But, you know, you got to make a buck somehow. Somebody else is going to sell it to them if we don't. I hate to say it, but as long as there are armaments in the world, and there always will be, as long as a person can take a stick and hit someone in the head with it, there will be an arms race between individuals in this world. Just part of our nature as the slightly less hairy apes that we really are. We're just cerebrally advanced apes, dude. Look at chimpanzees and how they act. Sometimes they'll randomly turn on a member of their own family and rip them limb from limb. They'll torture each other. They go to war with one another. It would be nice if we had evolved from bonobos instead. Unfortunately, I think that jury's no longer out on that one. Yeah, we might as well sell to people. Why would we want the UN to tell us who we can sell to? We should sell to the Russians. That'd be funny. That's about all. Peace out.